saw how clean this place was coming in?
Yes, sir. Your job is to keep it that way.
And no fourth floor, darling. Those patients need special care. Off limits to you.
These are good people. They deserve comfort in their twilight years.
Here to get your garbage.
You know, you've got interesting eyes.
There's something very wrong with this place. Something terribly wrong.
Hey, man, I'm not gonna hurt you.
It's time to play by the rules.
What is going on?
Sometimes, when things are bad on the outside, we have to look on the inside.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Fresh Cuts. This is Mike. Joining me as always, it's Mr. Venom. What's up, Venom?
Greetings and salutations, sexy senior citizens. I don't know how many of those are listening to us right now, but if they're here, welcome anyway. I'm doing pretty well. How the hell are you doing, Mike?
I am doing well. If there are any listening, we obviously appreciate it.
Yeah, listen to us in between all the action.
Yeah. Let us know what we're doing wrong, if we are, with your wisdom. Also with us, it's Don and Ollie. What's up, Don?
Hey, what's going on? Always happy to be here.
All right, so this was kind of an interesting week because there was actually like 4 movies in the theater. I know a movie hit Shudder, and I'm sure there was other various like indie stuff scattered across VOD. But it was weird because like I think all the releases were somewhat like smaller. I think The Home was maybe the widest, but even that I think was 2,000 screens, which sounds like a lot, but I think your major releases are 4,000. So so it's funny because like going into the weekend, I thought I was gonna at least be able to see 3 of the 4 of them, but the problem was most of them, at least in my city, had very limited times you could go, which kind of screws up how I like to see movies, and 2, just my ability, because family stuff, I can't always, if a movie has a particular showing at a particular time and day, I can't always put everything else to the side like I could 20 years ago. So I thought I'd be able to see 3 or 4, but I actually only saw 1 in the theater. The other one, Ick, which we're not doing, I might still be able to get out to see it this week, but of course it'll be too late to actually do it for the show. But we ended up going with The Home, which, like I said, it was, I think, the widest of all of them. And let's see, it stars Pete Davidson. Everyone knows who he is, I'm assuming. And horror thriller, and the synopsis follows Max, who realizes that the residents and caretakers in the retirement home he started working at hide sinister secrets. So if this is your first exposure to this movie, yes, that's right. We are on our second retirement home movie covered on Fresh Cuts this year, which it's always interesting how that works out. Never usually planned. It just happens. Very different movies, but some similar themes maybe going on. But let's see what we thought of The Home, and we'll start with Venom for your general thoughts. What did you think of The Home?
Now it's funny because I went online today to watch some YouTube reviews and see what some other movie reviewers thought of this one. And this movie is getting scathing reviews. Like most of the reviews I saw or listened to called this movie a waste of time, too slow for its own good. One review called it crap. Well, my friends, I am here to give the differing opinion because shock, I fucking love this movie. I had an absolute great time with this movie. Now, let me caveat that by saying this isn't like a beginning to end thrill ride. Not at all. This is an incredibly slow paced movie. This movie is not scary at all. This movie has very little atmosphere. There are some moments of tension, but depending on how invested you are in these characters, in your opinion, there might not be any tension in the movie. Admittedly, this is very much what do you call it? An acquired taste, I would say. I am not a Pete Davidson fan, so I know some people might be thinking that I'm a big Pete Davidson fan and that that might be why I really, really enjoyed this movie. No, I am not a Pete Davidson fan. In fact, I thought he was okay on Saturday Night Live. I watched his Netflix comedy special and maybe chuckled once or twice. I just didn't find it all that funny. I thought he added nothing to James Gunn, the Suicide Squad. Like he was basically just a wasted character there. This is another actor. Pete Davidson's another actor where he's basically Pete Davidson in everything he does. Now, I haven't seen his actual movie, King of Staten Island, only because I had no real interest in watching it. Well, my friends, I've turned around on Pete Davidson a little bit. I actually thought he did a pretty good job here, even though, yes, he is still Pete Davidson, especially when you're only 10, 15 minutes into this movie. It seems like he's just going to be playing the same kind of character he always does, that kind of lost youth, you know, trouble with the cops, trouble at home, blah, blah, blah. Just, you know, that's kind of thuggish attitude that we kind of get out of him. But then once he actually gets to the nursing home, he shows a heart that I absolutely did not expect. Like he actually cares about these residents, a couple of them specifically. He actually develops friendships with some of them. Throughout the film, he says sir and ma'am and please and thank you. And I'm like, who is this person? Like, this is not the character that they were setting Max out to be in the first 10 to 15 minutes of the film. But I like that. I like that kind of sense of, you know, kind of realizing this might be my last chance, so let me take it seriously. It was very un-Pete Davidson-like, basically. Now, as far as the mystery in the nursing home, this is color by numbers, been there, done that. We have seen this, a mystery going on at a nursing home where the staff seems a little bit more nefarious than they should be. One resident tries to help the new person, you know, by warning them, and then suddenly they disappear. It's like, I mean, these are tropes that we've seen before. So when it comes to the originality of this storyline, it gets a 1 out of 10. Absolutely. It's not the most original story. Hell, I mean, I would argue to say that The Rule of Jenny Penn is objectively the better film, even though I technically enjoyed this one more, but I still need to get to why. And I'm sure my co-hosts already know why. Folks, for 10 years now, as the 10 years that I've been podcasting, I've always talked about how much I hate weapon droppers or horror movie protagonists who don't do what needs to be done. Well, my friends, after admittedly about an hour and 20 minutes of very slow pace, very little information being seeped to the viewer, we get an ending where our protagonist knows what needs to be done and he fucking does it without thinking about his own safety, without worrying about getting arrested. He does what needs to be done. And I'm going to leave it at that for now for general thoughts. And because of that, I walked out of this theater with an ear-to-ear fucking grin on my face. I absolutely adore the last 15 to 20 minutes of this movie. And it's not just the bloody filled parts of that last 15 to 20 minutes. There's stuff before it that I absolutely loved. And then the final scene of the movie left me with just a big smile on my face, like I said. So for whatever it's worth, This movie is not for everyone. And by listening to some of the YouTube reviews, I understand that this movie is not everyone. I am absolutely in the minority here. I can almost guarantee I'm going to be the highest on this between my co-hosts here. But ultimately, I haven't even heard a good review for this movie yet of the maybe 6 to 8 reviews that I've listened to so far. But for whatever it's worth, sometimes movies hit people differently, and this movie hit me differently. Once we get the reveal of what's actually happening here, I have that same just pent up anger that Max, our protagonist, has in this film. And the fact that Max does fucking exactly what I would do, just it satisfied me. This movie is not going to satisfy everybody. I understand that. I am a man on a lonely island with this one, loving this movie as much as I do. Even putting it slightly above the Rule of Jenny Penn in my own, rankings for whatever that's worth. Even though I can objectively say the Rule of Jenny Penn is probably the better film, I just love The Home so much more. It gives me that petty, vindictive ending that I absolutely love. Again, like I said, when you get a protagonist like this who knows what needs to be done and just fucking does it, I can't say enough good things about it. And then I haven't even talked about the gore. I mean, we actually do get some great gore. We get a very nasty looking suicide about halfway through the film. I mean, and they do not shy away from showing it to us. The camera is literally right in the victim's face, and their head is impaled on a fence at that moment. So, I mean, kudos to the filmmakers. They did not shy away from what little gore they did give us. And then, like I said, that final ending is just absolutely glorious in my opinion. But like I said, I don't want to talk too much more about that. Overall, let's just say I understand that for most people, this is going to be a middle of the road, if not even teetering more towards the bad side of the road, as far as your standard, mysterious nursing home horror films go. I understand that I'm going to be a minority on this one, but ultimately, I got to be honest. I got to speak my truth. And my truth is I fucking love this movie. I walked out of the theater absolutely loving it. In fact, I wanted to watch it again. Unfortunately, I just watched it for the first time yesterday. I did end up seeing all 4 of the horror movie releases that came out this weekend. So I had a very busy weekend, did not have a chance to watch The Home again, but I greatly look forward to sitting down, especially knowing where that movie is going towards, with its final scene. I may appreciate the earlier parts of the movie a little bit more. So yeah, like I said, maybe not for everyone, but for whatever it's worth, it checked off a lot of boxes for me, and I ended up walking away absolutely loving it. Now, mind you, this is not a 10 out of 10, even in my opinion. It's not a top 10 candidate. I checked my top 10 before I came out here. It's just off the top 10 for me. So, not going to get too much of an opportunity to talk more about this later in the year, but for whatever it's worth, I had a great time with it. Again, you got to like the slow burns. You got to like the slower paced films. But if you like movies like Saint Maud, where it's very, very slow throughout, but then you get this just great final few minutes, this might be the movie for you. So I'll leave it at that for now. Pete Davidson, you have won me over. Go figure. I still don't think you're that funny, but at least you did a great job in this movie. So kudos. That's it for me.
Real quick, before I go to Dawn, would you say Ick is worth going to see in the theater?
Nah.
Okay.
It was fun. It was fun, but I mean, you don't have to pay for it. So if you can, since you have like one of those monthly passes, I would say, go check it out. It's silly.
Yeah, only because if I do, it's gonna be like you have to go at this time. It's
same thing out here in California. It's only playing at 4 p.m. It's only playing at 2 theaters, and it's only playing at 4 p.m., which kind of pissed me off.
I think it's listed as like a Fathom event movie, like not part of the regular rotation. That might be why, but it's just annoying. But okay.
I wasn't even sure if it was a Fathom or not because I had already run out of free passes for the weekend because I saw everything else. So I knew I was going to end up paying for Ick anyway. So I didn't even notice if it was a Fathom event, but you might be right. So.
All right. Okay, cool. All right. Over to Dawn. General thoughts on The Home.
Yeah. This one's not really one for me. Not really a whole lot here that I really got onto. Pacing's not really my thing. The setup's not really my thing. Not a whole lot of genuine horror going on. I had a hard enough time calling Rule of Jenny Penn a horror film, and this one kind of feels like a lesser version. And I do enjoy parts of it. I can see where Venom's coming from. I do think whatever Pete's name was, I didn't catch it.
Max.
What was it?
Max.
Max. Okay, yeah. Yeah, he is a pretty good guy. I do like the way he kind of builds up the relationships, builds up rapport with everybody, and he is a pretty sympathetic guy by the end of it, which like Venom was, I was kind of surprised at. The final battle is really interesting. As soon as he does what he does, again, we're not spoilers. I knew Venom was going to enjoy it, so yeah, that was a pretty obvious call on your end. Um,
My co-hosts know me well.
yeah, I was like, okay, yeah, Venom's gonna like this guy. First instinct, yeah. But yeah, it's one of those too little, too late, and too little is pretty much the guaranteed trope here. I can see this working more as like a short or an anthology segment more than a feature film, just with the way that it's paced. Um, Not necessarily that it's a bad thing, but it's just for me, I don't think that this is laid out to the degree that it needed to be for a feature length. The idea can work, but there needs to be more going on. Again, not for lack of spoilers, but if we get more attacks, more interactions with the residents, I can see this maybe changing somewhat slightly, but the way that we get this, the way that it plays out here, yeah, the atmosphere is just not there. The action's just not there. One or two gory bits doesn't really work for me, and it's enough to kind of keep me there, but it's not enough to make me say, okay, yeah, great stuff. I really enjoy what it's doing, and the payoff is there. I need a little bit more, and it doesn't really generate enough. I can see some maybe appreciating like the first third where we're kind of getting the groundwork of everything. We're getting the layout. We're getting the scope of the situation. But by like the 30-40 minute mark, things need to start happening, and it doesn't really do that until the final 20 minutes. So yeah, it's not really there for me. It looks good, but yeah, the tension's not there, the atmosphere is not there, the action's just not there, and it needed more, and it needed more overt genre fare for me to kind of get into it. So I don't think it's an absolute train wreck, but I do find myself feeling more along the lines of what Venom said, where it's kind of on the lesser end of the scale. Like I do think it's better than like an absolute train wreck or dumpster fire or whatever those terms were. It is genuinely better than that. Like I said, Max is a really good guy. He does kind of win you over with how he kind of interacts with everyone. And again, the finale does make some a little, it does generate some action, but yeah, there's just not much else in between all that. And it, I can't say it's worthless, but this is definitely one that I can see waiting for streaming. I don't really see much else for it. So yeah, at the for the sense of not giving spoilers away, I guess back to you, Mike.
All right. So I guess I'll only because you kind of left off on it, Don. I'll just pick up on that specific point. As far as like seeing in the theater, I wouldn't say there's anything like over the top, like blows you away with its presentation that it's like a theater watch. Now, I'm usually always going to say see it in the theater just because it's horror, and I do I do like to see like more kind of indie horror supported, but if you're someone that can't see like as many movies in the theater as we all go see, which is pretty much every week, uh yeah, there might be other ones you should like prioritize. But I'd so but as far as me liking it, I liked it enough to say yes, go see it in the theater. So I actually did kind of like this movie more than I was expecting. Venom, it's funny because you brought up like the first 10, 15 minutes, and what we got from Pete Davidson that first 10 to 15 minutes, the first thought in my head was like, oh, Venom's gonna hate this because I didn't know. Because to me, that first 10 to 15 minutes was Pete Davidson basically being the same Pete Davidson we've seen all the way from SNL to his
Mhm.
comedy to most other movies, shows, appearances he's done. It was like, oh, we're getting another Pete Davidson is Pete Davidson. So I was like, oh man, this is going to be an interesting discussion. But then once we kind of get, once the table's set and we kind of get to our main location, they actually kind of reel the character in, which I did appreciate. Because like I wouldn't even say that like he like blew me away with his performance or anything, but he just felt reeled into what we normally get from the type of characters he plays. Like I was like, okay, they're actually trying to have him do something a little bit different now, as opposed to like what I thought we were gonna get based on the first 10 minutes. Now, me personally, I love slow burns. I like a slow developing mystery where you just get a little like hint of something going on and to where it builds. Because I'm always of the mindset if you get too much too soon, it makes the like conclusion or climax less impactful. Now, with that said, I'm not going to say that they couldn't have trickled in like a little bit. They could have given us a little more like crumbs along the way. I'm not going to discount that opinion. I would agree. I think it's what about a 90-minute movie, somewhere around there. Um, but as far as the story and where it went, I agree with Venom that it's set up as a pretty familiar story, with like, oh, there's always the one person that's actually good that's going to try to help our hero. How long does that person last? Well, it's a horror movie, so usually something's going to happen because two of them can't survive, right? But and then I actually liked what we got as the reveal and what they were doing. I'm not gonna say it's super deep because like I think it is pretty service level, but I liked kind of like the play on like uh I guess you would say I guess it's a boomer generation because technically I think the oldest of Gen X is getting up there, but not quite the boomer age yet. So I did kind of like the boomer Gen Z type of thing of like it felt like they were doing a little commentary on that, which I can get more into spoilers or once we get into spoilers. I don't want to try to over explain things now. I don't think there was like super deep subtext going on. It was mostly surface level, but I did kind of appreciate what they were saying with like why they were doing what they were doing, and I'll leave that at that because yeah, can't expound on it yet. But overall, I was entertained, and like Venom, I didn't look around too much at reviews, but I expected mixed reviews on this one because Pete Davidson himself is pretty polarizing. Like I
Mhm.
think there's an argument to make that like he's not really like lead actor material for most things. I think this role kind of fit him okay, but I understand he's polarizing. Um, but I didn't expect like the across the board like hate of the movie, right? Because like
Yeah.
it's not, I don't know, like even if the movie's not your personal cup of tea, I totally get it, but like I didn't think it was like bad in any way. There's criticisms to be had, but like bad, I don't know. So I expected more mixed things, but I guess not. I guess I'll be with Venom on this one as one of the few that liked it.
Hey.
I also like also in our specific like network of people, I haven't really heard from many that have even seen it. So there's that too. I mean, we might get more mixed reviews once more people that I can actually
Mhm.
like literally talk to have seen it because no one I know has. But yeah, overall I like it. Not I don't I would assume looking at my list it would already not be a top 10. But at this point, I would say it's not that far out. But I think by now there's probably 10 I would put ahead of it. But I
Yeah.
did enjoy it. I liked it more than I thought I would going into it. And yes, that finale was great. I liked I liked that they once they committed to it and got to it, and there was a really cool death earlier, which I'm not going to say what character it happened to, but that was pretty gnarly looking and
Yep.
cool. And yeah, it could be just one of my personal preferences. I always like slow burns, so that probably helped in my case. But overall, I found it enjoyable. I liked it. It not completely original, but I still felt like it still felt a little bit different than a lot of the stuff we're getting in multiplexes. So I did appreciate that. And cinematography, I liked. Sound design, I liked.
Mhm.
Uh, I it didn't feel like, oh, we just got to do like Gen Z music because Gen Z crowd. It actually felt like a good score too,
Yeah.
which I liked. Which I was a little worried because with Pete Davidson again, I think there's a tendency with when they put him in movies, it's like we got to do the uber Gen Z appeal push. But this one, it didn't feel so much like that as opposed to other stuff he's been in. So overall, I give it an endorsement. I would say go see it, and I'll leave it at that. Back to you, Venom.
Yeah, I was really worried about this one just because of how much I hated bodies, bodies, bodies. If you guys remember back to our review of that one, of the three of us, I was the most vocal about hating it just because it was generational humor, making fun of, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, millennials, whatever the fuck. And that's not really something that I generally find all that entertaining. I try not to speak in absolutes, and that's one of the things that is included in that. I don't say things like, oh, boomers are stupid or millennials are pussies, or I just don't, clump people into one big group like that, or at least I try not to. So yeah, I was worried about this one with the how much I hated bodies, bodies, bodies. I even talked about it on Facebook this weekend where I was talking about how much I just was not looking forward to watching this movie because of Pete Davidson's track record. But my God, I walked out of that theater. I've already said it like 3 or 4 times. I'm going to say it 3 or 4 more times. I walked out of that theater with a shit eating grin on my face. I just had a great time with that last 15, 20 minutes of the film. And I will agree mildly with both of my co-hosts that yeah, this doesn't need to be seen in theaters. Like, there's nothing remarkable about any of the filmmaking. It's solid. None of it's particularly bad, but like I said, it's just a very basic nursing home. Set design isn't exceptional by any stretch. It works. It's serviceable. But just elements of it absolutely worked for me. So yeah, even I, as much as I love this movie, would say this isn't vital to see in theaters. Well, I will say though, is if you are able to get screeners for Bambi the Reckoning in your hometown at theaters, that was the movie of the weekend for me, my friends. I'm not going to get into a full-on review. I will say I had an absolute blast with it. You guys, longtime listeners, know how much I love the Blood and Honey movies, and this movie actually took itself a little bit more seriously than Blood and Honey, but it still had that same kind of over the top, ridiculous vein. So yeah, Bambi's Reckoning, and I got to see it with the director doing a Q&A afterwards, and he was absolutely hysterical. So anyway, my point is Bambi the Reckoning is the movie of the weekend. So if you get a chance to see that, go see it. This one, The Home, not vital, theatrical viewing by any stretch. I would say wait for streaming, wait for VOD. In fact, most of the people listening to my voice are probably not going to like The Home. As I've already said, it's a very polarizing movie with, very slow pacing, a very polarizing lead character that, some people are instantly going to boycott the movie just because of the person in it. And there's just not a lot here for general horror fans, and I can admit that. I can happily admit it. I said it earlier, the movie is not scary. The movie doesn't have any real atmosphere. The movie barely has any tense scenes unless you genuinely care about these characters. I can see a lot of people watching this movie and just not relating to anybody. They don't relate to the young thug who has trouble with the police and is on his final chance to avoid jail, and they definitely don't relate with octogenarians living in a nursing home, living out the final years of their life. So I can see why a lot of general horror audiences aren't going to gravitate towards this one, and again, that's fine. But for me, and it seems like for Mike, it was a surprise. It was fun. It didn't take itself too terribly seriously, which I also appreciate. I don't know. I don't know what else I can really say about it without getting into spoilers. So I will basically just, as usual, ask my co-hosts, do they have anything else they want to say before I get into this walkthrough? I'm going to try to make this walkthrough really short since it is a very basic story, but I'll give a little bit more time to the third act.
Yeah.
So
I'll just to like cap off my general thoughts on like kind of why I liked it, because I did kind of like the mystery of what was going on, because just because of the way the movie's set up, you obviously know, okay, something sinister is going on here. I mean, that's just the way the movie's going to turn out. So a lot of it to me is going to be determined like, okay, well, what are they going to, or what are we as viewers going to discover? What's ultimately going to be the payoff, the explanation, who's involved, what's the conspiracy going on. And I pretty much liked what they gave us in that sense. Like, I was a little worried that it was just going to be something stupid because, again, the Pete Davidson factor. It's like you just don't know. Is this going to be totally just kind of like dumb? But I actually kind of liked it. To me, it felt like one of those like cheesy asylum movies you might get in the 80s with like they throw in like a conspiracy about what's going on, and then when it comes to the third act, now's the time for the hero to shine with like them doing what they got to do. Like, to me, it kind of followed that format, and I thought it did a pretty decent job at all that.
Nice. All right, folks, let's go ahead and get into it. Our movie opens up sometime in the past. I would say probably a good 15, 20 years in the past. We see a foster family, a black dad and a white mother. They have a large family of foster children that they foster, they bring into their home, they raise, and then when they're 18, they kind of it's implied that they kind of send them off to college, just to kind of give these orphans a chance at life. So our movie opens up with a going away party. We see two brothers, Max, who is young at this point, so he's not Pete Davidson yet, but that is Pete Davidson's character. And then his brother Luke, who is basically about to go off to college. So it looks like he graduated high school and he's about to go off to college. So, there's a big party. There's a big emotional scene between the brothers where, thicker than blood is kind of like their motto, because they're not blood brothers, they're foster brothers, but they talk about how they're going to be together for the rest of their life. And Luke talks about how he's never going to abandon Max. He's going to go off to college, but college is only about an hour away. So he should be able to come home periodically, just to visit his brother. Unfortunately, what ends up happening is the brother ends up dying. I don't think they actually tell us what happens, if it was like a car accident or something like that. They basically just say that, oh no, he committed suicide. I'm so sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah, it was suicide. Totally.
They said he was like struggling, and then they
yeah
alluded to that, taking his own life.
Exactly. So yeah, and they did have a note. Apparently, there was a note that Luke left talking about his struggles in college and that he took his own life. Of course, that messed up Max, and now we get our time jump to modern day. Max is now played by Pete Davidson. We see him breaking into a building and putting up some graffiti, some actually pretty badass graffiti with a big old dragon setting a city on fire. But of course, the police show up. Max doesn't even run. He literally waves at the police as they're pulling up. So obviously, Max doesn't have too much regard for his own freedom. After being arrested, his foster parents are called in. His father comes in. His father's name is Cooper, played by Victor Williams. He basically tells them that he pulled one last favor for him, and that basically he's already on his third strike. He's already been arrested multiple times. The judge wants to send him to prison, but Cooper says that he made a deal with the judge where Max can do 4 months of community service at a nursing home as their new superintendent, cleaning, minor repairs, taking care of the place, blah blah blah. Max reluctantly agrees and then goes off to the home. Once there, he's introduced to the staff, who are instantly aggressive towards him because they know that he is, on probation, that he's doing community service. So instantly they're like, if you do anything wrong, we'll report you. If you take anything, we'll report you. If you abuse any of the citizens, or the residents, will report you. You know, just basically being real hard asses to him. But Max ends up kind of changing his ways, like Mike and I kind of alluded to. He starts saying please and thank you and ma'am and sir a lot more once he gets to this nursing home. Like I alluded to earlier, it seems like Max understands that this is his last chance to avoid jail time, so he's taking it seriously. He eventually ends up meeting Norma. She's the first resident that he kind of develops a friendship with. She's an older woman. Her son has passed away, unfortunately, and she says that Max kind of reminds her of her son, so she's very friendly with him. Max is obviously, you know, very nice to her, to the point where he even goes out of his way to make sure that, you know, she's taken care of in multiple scenes. He eventually also develops a relationship with another resident named Lou. Lou is played by John Glover. Lou is a former actor, so you know he definitely has that kind of bohemian look to him. He's got the long hair, dresses kind of hippy dippy, and like I said, former actor, so he's very Victorian with the, you know, very proper with the way he speaks. He, like, everything he says is loud because he's a stage actor, so he's used to projecting out to the audience. So he, you know, John Glover does a great job with this character. Eventually, of course, mysterious things start happening. I don't remember exactly how all the mystery started, but basically, Max, he was staying on the third floor of this nursing home. On his first day, he was told to stay out of the fourth floor, that it was for the more dangerous residents of the nursing home. Well, one night he can't sleep because of all the screaming coming through the ventilation system from the fourth floor. So he ends up going up there. He ends up breaking in, of course, because of course it is locked, but he breaks in the same way that he broke into the building earlier in the movie. He breaks into the fourth floor. He gets into a common room on the fourth floor, and he just sees residents in white gowns, all just kind of sitting in their wheelchairs, just dead to the world. You know, like a couple of them are just drooling. One of them is just making random noises. Eventually, one of the old men notices Max and gets up and almost seems to attack him. Obviously, Max is a young man, and this guy looks like he's about 85, so it's not like the old man's doing any damage. Unfortunately, the orderlies come in. I forget the name of the two orderlies, one man, one woman, but you know, the douchebag orderlies, if you will. They end up coming into the room and accusing Max of attacking the resident instead of vice versa. So of course, Max gets a talking to by the doctor. The facility is run by Dr. Sabian. Through Max's investigation, he discovers that Dr. Sabian was a once prominent doctor who was later shamed because of some experiments that he did involving the eye and longevity and life longevity. So he basically was laughed out of, you know, the medical association, and now he basically just runs this nursing home. On one of the evenings there, he continues talking to Norma. Norma, in her room, has a painting that's torn in half that was painted by her son. It's the last possession that she has of her son. And she said that the half that's missing was torn off by the son because they got into an argument right before he got into his car accident, and he basically threw away that half. So she's got half a picture in a frame. Max actually paints the rest of the image onto that and gives it to Norma as a gift, which of course Norma gets very emotional. She starts realizing that, you know, Max really is a nice guy, and that's when she starts with the warnings. She basically starts telling him, Max, listen, there's something wrong with this place. There's something very, very wrong here. You need to get out of here. And just as she's about to finish that sentence, that you need to get yourself out of here, one of the orderlies, you know, the big bad ass orderly walks, basically comes around the corner. Norma stops talking, closes the door. Obviously, you know, Max is worried because obviously the look on Norma's face, you know, he knew that she wasn't messing around. She very much had fear in her face. Anyway, Next morning, Max is outside kind of taking care of the lawn, and bam, out of nowhere, a body lands on a metal fence, impaling itself completely on the fence. And yes, it is Norma. And my friends, this effect is fucking great. There's not a lot of gore in this movie, definitely not enough for most horror fans, but this particular shot is so well done. We actually see the body hit the fence, land on it, and then we get multiple close-ups of Norma's face with one of the fence posts literally going through her face. I mean, like I said, they didn't pull any punches when it came to that, so kudos there. Obviously, Max starts, freaking out, like, okay, the one resident who tried to help me suddenly commits suicide. And then she left a note talking about how she missed her son and she wanted to join her son, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, Max doesn't think that she actually killed herself. So he actually goes to Lou to ask him, do you actually think that she killed herself? And during that conversation, Lou ends up having like a mental breakdown and grabs a pair of pliers and starts pulling out his own teeth. He starts telling Max, you got to get all my teeth out of my mouth, basically just acting crazy as shit. The staff comes in, they're able to take Lou out of there. Eventually, Pete or Max gets the update that Lou's going to be fine. He has episodes like this every now and again, blah, blah, blah. So that evening, while Max is sleeping, he ends up hearing his door close, like his bedroom door, like slam shut. When he wakes up and looks, there's a blacklight lamp at his door. Like literally, it looks like somebody opened his front door, put a blacklight lamp there, and then just closed the door and left. So he grabs the blacklight, turns it on, doesn't really understand why it's there. But then we, the audience, can see that behind him, there are letters painted in blacklight reflective ink. And so, in our head, we're like, turn around, dumbass, there, it's right there. Eventually, yes, he does turn around. He turns on the black light, and the message on the wall is find the marked ones. Obviously, he doesn't really understand what's going on. So he basically goes around with the black light, going to all the different residents' room, because him being the super, he does have a key to everyone's room, except the rooms on the 4th floor, of course. So he's going around looking for more messages on people's walls. What he eventually finds is one of the residents has a black light X, like on the back of their neck. You can only see it when the black light is reflecting on it. And then Max, continues going room to room. He ends up finding more people that have the X on the back of their neck, and, blah, blah, blah. Eventually, Max orders a bunch of security cameras. After this whole situation with the blacklight happens, he decides to buy a bunch of those spy cameras, those real small security cameras. He buys like maybe half a dozen to a dozen of those, and actually puts them up in various places throughout the hospital, obviously hidden so the staff doesn't find it. He ends up buying a flat screen TV that he puts in his bedroom, and that becomes his like monitoring station where he can now monitor all the cameras. Well, that night, while he's monitoring the facility, he sees one of the residents get taken out of their room, put into a wheelchair, and then wheeled down to the basement. And while they're down there, the camera that he has set up isn't actually in the room. It's in the hallway outside the room, but he can see a very nefarious looking character with a black hoodie on and a Doberman Pinscher, on a leash. And the dog is like, it seems like the dog is just relentlessly barking at the resident. You can kind of hear the resident almost like not panicking, but like making sounds that don't sound like they're happy, if you will. Max decides to try to go downstairs, but just as he's about to leave his room to go downstairs, he gets an instant message on his computer. He also has a laptop, I forgot to mention. He gets an instant message from a mysterious person named Faceless Fantasies, or it's actually like a chat room called Faceless Fantasies. He ignores it the first couple of times it pops up, but then eventually it comes up and like a shitload of the chat windows pop up, practically covering his entire screen. So then he's like, well, shit, I can't ignore it anymore. So he goes ahead and enters the chat. And what we see a woman on the floor in a very dilapidated room, almost like a dark web, murder for hire type situation, where she's in this dark room. She's scantily clad, she's not fully dressed. And she walks up to the camera, but there's software, and you can tell it's software because every time the person on the camera moves, you can kind of see the effect, the filter on their face kind of change a little bit. So we basically get a woman with a no face filter, where it looks like she just has eye sockets and like just a black gaping hole for a mouth. And she basically tells Max, I need you. I've been investigating this place for years. They're doing something bad to the residents. I need you to investigate this place. And Max is like, obviously, Max is freaked out that this person found him, just out of the blue. And eventually the conversation ends up getting cut off, and then Max decides to run down to the basement to see if he can help that resident that got, taken down in the wheelchair. When he gets down there, he finds the nefarious character in the black hoodie holding the Doberman Pinscher, basically keeping guard. And as soon as the guy in the black hoodie notices Pete standing there, Pete basically just runs out of there and runs back up to his room. And that's pretty much the end of that. The next day, Lou comes back from the infirmary. Obviously, he looks a little beat up, but he is fine. So, luckily, Lou seems to be safe. But then that night, Max decides to continue doing investigation. This is where he continues to do investigation on Dr. Sabian, the guy who's running this facility. This is where he finds out that he's a disgraced doctor who was working on some kind of longevity drug that had something to do with the eye. They talked about his eye surgery practice in some of the newspaper clips that Max was finding. But then eventually the person at Faceless Fantasies, the mysterious woman that was talking to him in the chat room, appears in his fucking bedroom. She's just standing there. I've no mask or anything. We see that it's just, a basic looking white woman. We find out that her father was in that facility and that a month ago he basically disappeared. She doesn't know where he is. The staff won't tell her. They won't let her visit since he's technically not there anymore. There's no reason for her to visit, blah, 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 blah. And Max obviously, just freaks the fuck out and ends up, I believe at this point, there's another situation where he gets caught sneaking around. They basically, he ends up getting knocked out by the guy on the fourth floor that attacked him when he went up there. That guy ends up escaping the fourth floor for some reason. Honestly, I don't think he escaped. I think the staff let him out, but whatever. That's a conversation for another day. Think back to Oddity. Remember last year's Oddity and how they let that guy out so that he could do his nasty deeds? It kind of felt like that, but whatever. So after Max is attacked by the mysterious old man from the fourth floor, he ends up falling on the floor, getting knocked out. When he comes to, he's in a hospital bed. They're still there at the facility. And the one orderly, the female orderly is there, the bitchy orderly is there. And she's like, oh, you fell down. You got knocked out. But the Dr. Sabian's on his way up here to give you a full examination. And when she says full examination, you get that audio sting. You see the look on Pete's face kind of change. And as soon as that orderly leaves the room, Pete nopes his way right out of the hospital, literally climbs out the window, runs the fuck home, and basically goes back home to his foster home. When he gets there, his parents are there. They're already waiting for him because they already got the word that he escaped. Keep that in the back of your mind for later. He gets home. They're already there waiting for him. He gives them the condensed version of what's happening at that hospital, at that nursing home. The dad, Cooper, basically says, okay, I'm going to go talk to my judge friend and I'm going to see what we can get done about this. You stay here with your new foster sisters. As it turns out, that couple has already adopted 2 more kids, which may not mean a lot now, but when you realize, once we get to the reveal, it's a little sad. But anyway, Okay, so Pete stays home while his parents go to supposedly go talk to the judge. While he's there, his new foster sisters say, "Have you ever seen the secret room?" And the reason that they say this is because Pete has a trinket in his hand that he took from Norma's room after she had died, or from Norma's possessions, from the pile of her possessions, just a little trinket to remember her by, you know, no harm, no foul. But then the sisters see the trinket and they're like, "Oh, have you been in the secret room?" And obviously, Max doesn't know what the secret room is. The sisters end up taking him to a room inside the parents' bedroom's closet that's guarded by literally two full rooms. Like, it's got two entrances to it. When they finally get in there, it looks like an altar. It looks like something satanic. Like, it looks really, really fucking out there. And then Pete starts finding these photo albums. And what he finds in the photo albums are pictures of all the people at the nursing home. And when I say all the people, I literally mean all of them: staff, doctors, orderlies, and all the patients all together partying. Literally, it's almost like it's a New Year's Eve ball or something. So it's various pictures of them all partying. And then the last picture is a group picture of all of them together and one young person in a wheelchair. And the person in the wheelchair looks disheveled. It looks like they haven't slept in weeks. Like they look like they're just out of it completely. Pete continues looking through books. He looks through like 2001, 2004, 2005. Finally, he gets to 2009. And when he gets to the picture at the end of the book, it's his fucking brother Luke in the wheelchair. And it's the same set of pictures. All the residents, all the doctors, they're all partying together. So this is where we get the first idea that this might be a conspiracy, maybe even a cult situation, whatever you want to go with. Once Pete finds the picture of his brother Luke, knowing that Luke is now not dead, Pete actually, or Max, makes a realization that he didn't realize before. He takes the picture, he ends up running back to the nursing home, breaking into the nursing home, and then breaking into the fourth floor. He walks right up to the guy, the mysterious old man who attacked him, and he shows him the picture. And instantly the old man smiles. Yes, my friends, it's Luke. Luke, Max's older brother, who's only older by like 4 or 5 years. Like, he's not that much older than Luke, but here he is standing in front of him looking like he's about 90 years old. Like, he can't speak. He has no speech. He can only like make certain noises like grunts and shit like that. He can barely walk. He's in a wheelchair. So obviously the pieces are starting to come together. We're starting to realize that this is a situation where this staff and the residents are quote unquote stealing youth from young people and keeping themselves young. Eventually, Pete gets caught while he's on the fourth floor talking to his brother, getting the confirmation that, yes, it's Luke. You know, they're happy to see each other. They're hugging. Unfortunately, the male douchebag orderly comes up behind him, injects him with a syringe. Pete gets knocked out instantly. When Pete wakes up, he himself is strapped in a chair and wearing a white gown. And then this is where we get our full reveal of what's happening. We see everyone there, all the staff, all the residents, everyone is there surrounding Pete, who is tied down in this wheelchair. And that's when Dr. Sabian gives him the explanation that during his research, with eye surgery and with trying to, extend life, he found out that there is a sac directly behind the pupil of the eyeball that has a life nectar. That's what they call it in the movie, a life nectar. It's literally what gives people their vitality, their energy, their youthfulness. And what they've been doing is basically setting people up one person. It seems like they do it one person at a time. But there is no nursing home, my friends. The entire thing was a ruse. And I gotta say, the fact that this fake nursing home was 10,000 times more realistic than the real nursing home in The Rule of Jenny Penn says a lot to me. So, and again, this is coming from someone who worked in a nursing home for 2 years. So yes, I understand. I'm kind of more sensitive to it than other people, but it still bothered me. So anyway, there's our reveal. The doctor basically says, okay, the doctor admits to Max that they've actually been draining him the whole time he's been there. That's why he hasn't been able to sleep. It's that he was getting knocked out and having shit drained out of his eye every night, but not very much, not enough that it would leave any kind of visible mark or like blood stain or anything on the eye. They were just kind of, testing it out, if you will. But then Dr. Sabian approaches Max with the syringe. He plunges it into his eye so that the tip of the syringe is right behind the pupil. And then he, sucks out the nectar that's in there. It kind of looks kind of pinkish, viscous, almost like pink abscess type looking stuff. It's very thick. It looks like, and like I said, they call it life nectar. And also the reason, for those of you wondering why my greeting today was sexy senior citizens, basically whenever these people inject themselves with that stuff, they end up losing all their inhibitions for a little while. They basically turn into horn dogs because this stuff is like testosterone and estrogen and just everything that, makes people horny. And literally, like, as they're draining Pete, some of the old people in the background literally start fucking. Like, I'm not kidding. They start getting naked. We hear an old lady say, "Oh, fuck me harder." My friends, seeing an 80-year-old woman say "fuck me harder" is a little jarring to a guy like me. So it was interesting. I'm not into gilf porn. So yeah, it was definitely an odd feeling to see that. Anyway, they finish the procedure. Pete wakes up in the 4th floor, up in that room with all the other people that have been drained. He's standing there, or he's sitting there. He's not strapped to the chair anymore because after they drain these people, they literally have no energy. So they have no ability to get up on their own and defend themselves or whatever. So they let them stay up there, unrestrained. What ends up happening is the brother, Luke, old man Luke, looks over, sees that his brother has started to be drained. Now, Pete doesn't look like an old man, but he definitely looks older. He looks like he's at least 10 years older from the day before, after they did this procedure. So Luke decides to take action, which is pretty goddamn awesome. Luke, and this is where the movie just starts getting so great for me. This is the last 15 or so minutes. So Luke ends up ripping off one of the spokes on his wheelchair, the thin little metal rods in the middle of the wheel. He rips off one of the spokes, and then he pokes himself in the eye in the exact same spot where the doctors poked him. He pulls the spoke out and then lets the life nectar drain out of his eye and into a glass. Luke then proceeds to do the exact same thing to everyone in the room. Literally, even some of the people that already look like they're on the brink of death anyway, Luke walks right up to them, sticks the spoke right into their eye, collects their life nectar, and gets a glass, not quite full of it, but a glass that's got a good amount of it. Then he walks up to his brother, who's obviously, incapacitated in the chair, and he literally forces him to drink it. And it looks disgusting. Like I said, it looks like pink abscess. It's just, it looks awful. Luke basically forces Max to drink it. And then basically the only thing we see Max's eyes dilate. We see his pupils get really, really big. And then the scene cuts. And what we see at that point is the female douchebag orderly then walk into the room to make sure, that everything's okay, that Pete, Max is doing all right. She walks into the room and instantly realizes that Max's wheelchair is empty. As soon as she realizes it's empty, Max comes up from behind her with the spoke that Luke ripped off his wheelchair and just repeatedly fucking stabs her in the neck over and over and over again until she fucking goes down. It's pretty spectacular. And then, my friends, I am in fucking hog heaven at this point, because at this point, I am so happy with Max as our protagonist. He knows exactly what needs to be done. He doesn't give a rat fuck about his own freedom, his own safety. Like, if he would have called the police, like, he easily could have just left at this point, taken his brother with him, called the police. Obviously, the police wouldn't believe him, and that would be the end of our story. But Max knows what the fuck he needs to do. He goes to the tool chest, he grabs a hammer and a hatchet, and he just goes fucking Victor Crowley on everyone in this goddamn hospital. And it is completely unedited, my friends. We are seeing the hatchet go into old ladies' faces, buried into their goddamn faces. We see him continuously bashing people with the hammer. It seems like he's using the hatchet on the residents and the hammer on the staff. I don't know if that was intentional, but that's kind of what it was looking like to me. And he is leaving an absolute wake of dead bodies behind him. He is covered in blood, head to toe. I mean, he looks like Carrie. Just covered, absolutely covered in blood. But he ain't done. He's going around, and suddenly, once the hospital catches wind that Max is doing this, we start hearing screams of Max is coming for us. Max is going to kill us. Blah blah blah. They're all terrified of Max. Eventually, Max does find Lou, and the actor guy that he developed a friendship with. He basically uses Lou as a human shield to go after the doctor, Dr. Sabian. As it turns out, Dr. Sabian has the only firearm in this hospital, so he uses Lou as a human shield. Dr. Sabian shoots all 6 shots out of his gun. Every single one of them hit Lou, which obviously Lou falls over dead. Max walks up to Dr. Sabian, breaks his fucking wrist, and literally pulls at the broken part of it to expose the bone inside. Oh my God, folks. I'm sure just hearing my voice, you guys can see the smile on my fucking face right now. It is amazing. The only thing that I hated about this final rampage is that the 2 people that I wanted to see Max kill the most, his foster parents, the ones who literally adopted him and set him up to do this to him. Because when he was strapped down to the chair, they literally said, Max, this is your fault. You wasted all the opportunities that we gave you. And I'm thinking to myself, well, what about Luke? Luke was literally on his way to fucking college. He got entered in, he got into college. He was about to have a good life, but you guys set him up anyway. So obviously that's bullshit. It didn't matter that Max wasted his opportunities. This was going to happen to him regardless. Anyway, my point is that while Max is going on his rampage, there's a literal hurricane going on outside. I'm sure that was intentional on the filmmakers. Max is the hurricane inside the building, and then there's a natural hurricane going on outside the building. And unfortunately, Max's parents, his foster parents, they end up getting out of the building. They're about to get into their car when a large piece of the roof fixture comes off of the roof. It's blown off by the hurricane, and then it ends up just cutting both Max's parents, his foster parents, in half. That felt a little cheap to me, because it's like, these are the 2 people that literally are deciding what kids they're going to do this to. I really wanted to see him. I'd have rather the doctor get killed by the hurricane and let me see Max kill his parents. I don't know. Maybe the movie decided that might be a little too much, but I mean, considering everything we've seen up to this scene, it was pretty goddamn awesome. All right, so after the rampage, literally everyone in the hospital or in the nursing home is dead. Pete is literally the only man standing, and he still has his hatchet and hammer in his hand. He did not drop his weapons. I think he eventually dropped his hammer, but just the fact that, like I said, this scene, made me so happy because, again, we see a protagonist who sees what needs to be done and they fucking do it without any regard to themselves. I mean, this makes me think about stuff like You're Next. You're Next was another ending that I absolutely adored because that woman was such a goddamn badass. And she did what needed to be done. She didn't leave any of those fuckers alive. And here's Max now doing the same thing. Like I said, after everyone is dead, he goes over to Lou's dead body and he just says, all right, Lou, I'm taking it all back. And we see him pull out a syringe. And obviously, we don't see it in the movie, but obviously, yeah, Pete goes around with the syringe collecting all the life nectar out of the people that he just fucking massacred. And then he gives it all. Again, we don't see this, but it's implied with the ending of the movie. Basically, Max walks out of the hospital with Luke in tow. The old people from the fourth floor still look old, but they're up on their feet. They're walking. They even look somewhat energetic. Like Luke has an ear-to-ear grin on his face. He's happy that he finally gets to go with his brother. Don't know where they're going, obviously, because their foster home was a lie. But that's it, folks. That is fucking The Home 2025. And like I said, that ending pretty much saved the movie for me. Not to say that I hated the movie, but like I said, I was middle of the road the whole way. The suicide, the quote unquote suicide of Norma looked great. But like Don said, that's not really enough to keep us, hardcore horror fans invested in the movie. But once we get to that ending, I forgive everything. I forgive the slow pace, the lack of scares, the lack of atmosphere. It is all forgiven when I get to see Pete Davidson kill, I don't know, about like 3 or 4 dozen people, which is so great. And yeah, we actually get a happy ending. All the people on the fourth floor get to leave. Obviously, they're not going to be able to go back to who they were before because Max probably drained all the bodies of the life nectar in the hospital. And he did what he could with what he was able to collect. So, obviously it's up to the newly freed people from the fourth floor to decide where their lives go from there. But goddamn, folks, I'm sorry. As a petty and vindictive asshole, I absolutely love this ending. Pete Davidson won me over. As I said earlier, I still don't think he's funny, but goddamn if this was a great role for him. So yeah, kudos to Pete. Kudos to our writer-director, James DeMonico. Overall, like I said, objectively not a great movie, but it checked off all the boxes for me. So I walked away absolutely loving it. If you're a vindictive, petty asshole like I am, I strongly recommend The Home. And that's probably it for me. So back to you, Mike. I'm done creaming over the last 15 minutes of this movie.
I did kind of like the play on like because I think there was some commentary going on there with the fact that like there's the big issue of all around like boomers and kind of like what they've done over the last 30, 40 years, making conditions worse for like the next generation. So it kind of felt like they were speaking on that a little with the fact that the essence of the youth to like maintain like their own lifestyle and kind of like the self-centeredness of that generation. And like I said, it was super deep and profound, mostly surface level, but it seemed like that's what they were going for.
At least they weren't ultra heavy-handed with it. They weren't literally. It wasn't like Antebellum where the message was, black people good, white people bad. At least they weren't that goddamn heavy-handed. It was more. The messaging was more subtle. Like I said, I like the dichotomy of the hurricane outside and the hurricane inside the hospital. I thought that was great. So I think this movie is a lot better than people are giving it credit for, but I just don't think that the majority of like 20 and 30 somethings that like horror are going to get into this movie. Because like I said, you're not really relating with the protagonist and you're not really relating with any of the antagonists. So you almost don't care. And I can see that. If you don't care about these characters, there's absolutely no tension to this movie. And I totally get it. So, but it worked for me. So
I also really like John Glover as Lou, the patient.
Yeah.
He was kind of a riot.
And Dr. Sabian, for whatever it's worth, I mean, he played a good asshole. Like, he played the role well. And then he turned into an absolute little bitch when he got his arm broken. He was literally crying. I forgot to mention that. I love when grown people cry when they deserve it. I mean, when they deserve it. I'm not an asshole.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, looks like that's gonna do it for our discussion on the home in this episode of Fresh Cuts. But before we get out of here, maybe we got some new stuff for people to listen to. So, Venom, do you have anything?
Yes, I can finally announce that as of the release of this episode, you should be able to finally listen to the new episode of No More Room in Hell presents Creature Comforts, episode number 40. On that episode, we took a look at the 1957 creature feature classic, The Black Scorpion. A good time was had by all. I think I might surprise people with how much I actually enjoy that movie. So check out that episode. Like I said, that should be available now on the network when you hear this episode. Hopefully, we'll get into the planning stages for both the main show and the Crystal Lake gift shop coming up soon. We already have our movie picked for the next episode of Creature Comforts, but as that's our August episode, we'll keep it under our hat for now. And when we get a little bit closer to the release of that episode, we'll let you guys know what we picked, so you know what homework you have to do. But otherwise, that's it for me.
All right. How about you, Don?
As Venom mentioned, Creature Comfort should be available. The August episode was my pick, and I picked out a pretty fun one for everybody, so we'll leave that as it is. I do have an upcoming guest spot coming up. I don't know much. This is the first time I've ever worked with them. It is a show called They Pot Out at Night, mostly. It's a play on the famous quote from Aliens, or at least one of the famous ones. It's not the famous quote, but you know what I mean.
Yep.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, yep, I know what you're talking about for sure.
Yeah, it's not the famous. It's not the famous quote from Aliens, but it's one of the other ones. So
Newt's line.
yeah, that's where I was going with. Yeah, it's the first time I've worked with them, so I don't know much about it. I was basically contacted by them over the weekend to see if I was interested, and yeah, I'm gonna be doing a guest spot with them in the coming days. So when I know more, you'll know more. Hopefully, this isn't going to be one of those, episodes I've done in the past where I've talked about it for a few months. But again, we'll see. Again, I'll let you know when I know more. And other than that, just waiting on the releases of my roundtables from earlier in the year.
Cool. All right. For me, I actually did do a guest spot that only kind of materialized like a few days ago. I actually made my return to the 22 shots of moods and horror. I was just talking to him Friday about like unrelated stuff, just movie talk. And they usually take summers off, but like I think this year, maybe last year, but for sure this year, they've been kind of doing like one episode a month, just in between like their vacation stuff. And I was like, hey, what are you guys doing Sunday? Like just, and then Moods told me, and he's like, oh, you can hop on with us if you want. And when he asked, I really didn't think I was gonna have the time, especially because it was only like a couple days before the recording. But I ended up having time to watch the movies, and it was basically a summer movie theme where we talked about the ruins, the original Funny Games, and what is it, Eden Lake. So that was a fun time. That was yesterday. Usually, whatever they record on a Sunday, they get out by that Friday. So it probably won't be available when you're hearing this episode right away, but shortly thereafter, I'm assuming. So look for that on their YouTube channel. And that's it for me. And I'm assuming our next episode is going to be together, right?
Yes, we got Together opening this weekend, and then next weekend we actually have a decision to make because we have two highly regarded horror movies opening. On August 8th, we have Strange Harvest and Weapons. Both movies getting a lot of festival buzz. So we're going to have to make a hard decision next week. But yeah, this week, together.
Is Strange Harvest like a big wide release?
I was going to say, it depends on what the week after is, because I'm hearing Weapons more than Strange Harvest.
Oh, no, absolutely. No, Weapons has been getting buzz for a lot longer, like since last year. But over the last month or so, I've heard a lot about Strange Harvest as well, with some of the feedback that it's getting. So, I mean, I agree. Weapons is probably going to be the more the movie that people are waiting for more. So that's probably going to be the culprit. But obviously, I'm still going to watch them both, and we'll get together and make our final decision.
Yeah, I mean, if I get screenings for both, I'll try to make it a double header. Yeah, I'll just have to keep an eye on my Regal app or Fandango. One of the two, it'll pop up there eventually. Oh, yeah. Cool. All right. Well, that said, that's gonna end this episode. So thank you everybody for listening. We'll be back in about a week with the next one. Let's say bye to our listeners.
Later.
Real quick, the 4 movies I saw in theaters this weekend. The Home, really loved it. House on Eden, absolute crap. Avoid it at all costs. Bambi's Reckoning, surprisingly awesome. I had an absolute blast with it. And then Ick was just kind of middle of the road, maybe more leaning towards fun. Like, it's a silly little movie, but not one that I would recommend for theaters. Of the 4, I would say if you can get screenings for Bambi the Reckoning, go see it. It's fucking great. That's it for me.
All right. I guess that's it. Peace.